In 79 AD, deep beneath the deafening cheers of Rome's most magnificent arena, 19-year-old Sabina waited shackled in a pitch-black cell, the iron cuffs biting her wrists as the weight of 50,000 roaring spectators thundered overhead. They were celebrating the gladiator who had just slain her brothers in a match engineered not only as entertainment but as ritual punishment for the people Rome had chosen to erase. She could not see the blood cooling on the arena sand above her, nor the golden sunlight flashing across the emperor's box, but she could feel the vibrations in the stone around her. Each cheer was a reminder that her loss had become Rome's spectacle. What would unfold in the next 3 hours, hidden from the public, buried under centuries of silence, and aggressively omitted from imperial archives, was a ceremony so disturbing that even Rome's own historians later debated whether it should be spoken of at all. It was a convergence of triumph, humiliation, bureaucracy, and cruelty that the Senate quietly tried to bury beneath layers of official language and architectural grandeur. Before we unravel the truth of what happened in the darkness beneath the Colosseum, hit that like button if you have ever wondered about the secret aftermath of victory. What happened when the crowd vanished, the torches dimmed, and the real machinery of Roman control came alive? Subscribe, because once you understand this story, Rome's legacy of glory and civilization will never look the same again. The Colosseum, completed only the year before, was far more than an architectural marvel. It was Rome's largest political statement, a monument announcing that the empire could dominate nature, people, and narrative itself. Its vast tiers could contain entire armies. Its hypogeum labyrinth could store hundreds of animals, prisoners, and props. Its architecture functioned with chilling efficiency. Beneath the arena floor, a living machine of wooden elevators, cages, chambers, water systems, and guard passages formed a hidden underworld where the condemned were processed like livestock and gladiators waited for their moment in the sand. To the Roman public, the games were entertainment, a means of releasing social tensions and displaying the empire's grandeur. But to Rome's ruling class, the games were also a political instrument, a religious ritual, and a weapon of psychological warfare. When General Marcus Antonius crushed the Dine uprising the previous year, he returned to Rome with treasure, weapons, and more than 800 captives. Men were destined for execution, children were destined for servitude, and 124 noble women were destined for something far worse: systematic humiliation designed to break an entire culture's identity. Rome understood that conquering land meant little if the spirit of the defeated survived, so it attacked the symbols of resistance. It targeted families, ceremonies, and most of all, the dignity of women who held social, spiritual, and generational importance. Sabina was one of them. Before her capture, she had been engaged to Disabilis, a respected Daon warrior killed during the uprising. Now she stood barefoot on cold stone, her hair crudely shorn, her body catalogued, her fate determined not by justice, but by theater. Meanwhile, above ground, the day's celebrated champion, Gaius Valerius Maximus, received his victory crown. A towering, scarred survivor of 14 years in the arena, born the son of a debtor and sold into bondage as a child, Gaius had fought 89 official matches and knew that every triumph brought him closer to the Rudis, the wooden sword symbolizing freedom. His victory over the Dion champion had electrified the crowd and earned him not only wealth, but the imperial privilege that stood at the center of Rome's darkest tradition, the first choice of female captives as spoils. It was a reward Rome celebrated openly, cloaking cruelty beneath ceremony. Sabina, along with 17 others, was dragged into the washing chambers where guards scrubbed them with icy water, an act not of care but of preparation, stripping them of identity and presenting them as objects. Hair was braided plainly, tunics issued, names replaced with numbers. Older captives muttered prayers, others cried silently. Sabina endured in silence, her grief calcified into defiance. She overheard a guard joking that she had been chosen for the afternoon entertainment, a phrase that chilled her more than the cold water. She knew the Colosseum's rhythms well enough by then. Mornings were for feral beasts, early afternoons for major combats, and between those, the interludes, brief spectacles of humiliation, mockery, and ritualized domination. When the wooden elevator suddenly lifted her into the scorching sun, her eyes burned, and the world erupted in noise. The crowd saw 20 Dion women lifted into the arena, their crimes shouted by the herald: rebellion, sacrilege, treason. They were handed wooden swords and forced to perform a twisted parody of combat. The winners would be claimed by Roman champions, the losers condemned to execution or staged mythological deaths. Sabina faced Camacicus, her cousin and closest remaining kin, but neither lifted a weapon. Their refusal enraged the crowd, who hurled olive pits and curses, demanding blood. Guards stormed in and struck both women, dragging them from the sand, not toward death, as the spectators expected, but toward chambers reserved for post-victory allocations. Down below, bureaucracy hummed with soulless precision. Bronze tags were stamped Captiva, Dean Origin, for allocation. A clerk scratched in a wax tablet, 20 females processed, 2 resistant, divert to private chambers. The rooms Sabina and Camacicus were dragged into were not improvised spaces, but purpose-built. Stone walls fitted with restraints, hooks, benches, and drainage channels. Architectural evidence discovered centuries later by archaeologists who finally understood the purpose of these forgotten chambers. Moments later, Gaius Valerius Maximus entered Sabina's room, still wearing the sweat, dust, and blood of combat. Roman tradition granted him absolute authority. Sabina braced herself, but Gaius, exhausted by years of violence and perhaps shaken by the look of unbroken humanity in her eyes, removed his helmet and sat heavily, saying nothing. In broken Dion, he asked her name. She told him. She asked if he had a family. He shook his head. What passed between them over the next 2 hours was not affection, but recognition, a flicker of shared suffering in a world engineered to erase compassion. Whatever Gaius saw in Sabina, it pulled him across a boundary he had never crossed. When the guard returned, Gaius declared, "This captive is ill. I refuse this allocation. Send her to the physicians." It was the only legal loophole available. The guard understood the lie, but complied. Paperwork was simpler than confrontation. Sabina was sent to the medical barracks, a cramped, unsanitary ward where infections spread faster than treatments. 3 days later, weakened by injury and neglect, she died anonymously, entered into records only as Dean Female, expired. Gaius fought twice more in the weeks after, refusing his rewards each time. Some mocked him for weakness, others whispered that he had been enchanted, but word of multiple refusals spread beyond the barracks and eventually reached the Senate. On September 15th, Senator Quintus Aurelius Semicus filed a formal complaint after his nephew, a minor gladiator, was beaten for refusing his own post-victory allocation. The Senate, forced to confront Rome's unspoken rituals, held closed-door debates. Surviving documents use vague terms, the handling of defeated women, customs concerning captives, but beneath those mild phrases were heated arguments. Traditionalists insisted cruelty reinforced Roman supremacy. Reformers warned that humiliation stoked rebellions and undermined the empire's moral authority. Ultimately, politics prevailed. Provincial governors reported rising unrest tied directly to testimonies of Roman brutality. On October 1st, 79 AD, the Senate passed the Lex Captivitatis, restricting the public distribution of female captives and banning their use in interlude spectacles. Enforcement was inconsistent, loopholes remained, and private abuses continued, but it marked the first political recognition that Rome's rituals of humiliation had crossed a boundary even the empire could not openly defend. Gas later won his freedom and purchased liberty for Camacicus, then disappeared from the records, another life swallowed by Rome's machinery. Sabina, however, left no descendants, no epitaph. Her story survived only through fragments, ruins, and the traces of policy she unintentionally changed. When archaeologists in the early 21st century uncovered iron rings, bronze tags stamped captiva, drainage channels, and scratched inscriptions beneath the Colosseum, historians finally understood the purpose of those rooms and the truth behind the practices Rome had tried to obscure. Sabina's final hours, dying nameless in an overcrowded, neglected ward, embody the contradiction at the heart of Rome. A civilization capable of engineering wonders, yet equally capable of industrializing cruelty. Rome conquered not only bodies, but memories, identities, and narratives, twisting ritual into entertainment and suffering into ceremony. Her story forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. The line between civilization and barbarism is not drawn by monuments or power, but by how a society treats the powerless. Progress is never guaranteed. Every age must choose empathy over spectacle, humanity over tradition. Rome chose spectacle, and Sabina was part of the price. If this story unsettles you, subscribe now, because history's darkest corners matter far more than its polished myths. Beneath the sand and stone of Rome's greatest monument lies the real cost of entertainment, power, and forgetting.